and I have been in the business for 27 years. Over the past 5 years, we saw the change in the industry, and we embraced e-commerce, which became a major part of our business model. And we have been growing e-commerce in the region for the past 5 years. But the past 2 years, we have seen tremendous change, and this is what we're going to talk about.
Okay, can you guys explain a little bit more how your business exactly is involved in e-commerce? Yes, starting from you.
Okay. The thing is, yesterday you were talking about clearance.
Yes.
This is one chunk of e-commerce. If you want to talk about e-commerce, you cannot. And the session before, they were talking about moving freight and labeling, moving e-commerce by freight. It's just another package is moved by container, but it is labeled e-commerce. But I believe in that e-commerce cannot be one single step. You need to be involved in the whole process of e-commerce. Otherwise, it can be easily substituted. Because, take for instance, the clearance. Today, you are specialized in clearing e-commerce business. With time, a company like Amazon can have an in-house customs clearance broker who will have the license. The customs will give them the system, and they can clear it, so they don't need you anymore. What we're trying to see, and what I was talking to Sam a bit before, is that, yes, I agree with you. I'm not sure about 90%, but 2040, even 2030, you will see a totally different environment in e-commerce. And if we're not going to embrace that change, this tsunami of e-commerce that is changing all types of industries, we will be out of business. And in order to do that, we need to do more than one service in e-commerce. So we need to do customs clearance, yes, for inbound and outbound. At the same time, you can do the first mile, you can do the last mile. And the most important thing in e-commerce that people do not think about is the return logistics, which is the huge volume. Because the more people are using e-commerce, the more return they will have. And return is the biggest challenge for all e-commerce traders. I will not talk about that all the time, I'll leave it to the rest. I'll come back to you. What do you want me to say more?
Yeah, I think that's okay. Peter?
Okay, well, from our perspective, some years ago, you always were looking for some high yield e-commerce business to mix with your consolidations, if you were a traditional consolidator like we are. That has all sort of changed now because the demand or the growth of the e-commerce business has now put it into well into the mainstream of freight, basically, and the higher prices and so on are not necessarily there. It's sort of morphing together. So, and the challenges, at the moment, of course, is that capacity and capacity and price just are not coming together. So, what we're trying to do is sort of basically bring that to a point where we've got general cargo and e-commerce working together, and hopefully that'll give better utilization of capacity and a flattening out of prices.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that of e-commerce that it can be categorized into B2C, B2B, omni-channel and cross-border. So if you look at the importance of Airfreight, of course it stands out in the cross-border trade. And if you look at Asia or the Middle East, the cross-border Airfreight is going to be very large in the time to come. And if you take country specific like China and India or North Asia, I think e-commerce will play a substantial role with Airfreight. A lot of the Airfreight within China and countries like India were moving by air cargo, but then that was the evolution that was starting, like when it started off. Then it evolved to surface transportation. And now, with the consumer demand changing post-pandemic, it's actually picking up. The air cargo part is picking up. So I think even the capacity mismatch, of the airlines and the freighters, I think it has a really long way to go, and it'll hold on for a long time.
What I see as the success of the e-com businesses from the customer's perspective, the shipment needs to be delivered to the final consignee at the right time. So that completes a cycle of this sale. So in order to achieve that, we need to have a complete transparency in the system, right from the time we collect it from the shipper's door until it's being delivered either in your local region or across the world. It should be all properly integrated on your system, that the customer is able to have a proper visibility of the track and trace. So that I feel as a very important factor, and that is what TCIExpress specializes in.
So basically, you're talking about digitization and how the enhance the visibility of the track and trace, and so in order to enhance the customer satisfaction.
Exactly, that's right.
So we've already touched upon digitization. So I would like to you to share more ideas how your business has digitized, has done the digital transformation.
I think we're tackling the question for Mr. Tech. E-commerce is a huge topic.
Yeah.
And you cannot talk about e-commerce without talking about digitalization.
Yeah.
The IoT is transforming the world. So e-commerce and digitalization goes together. Because as we said, if you want to be an e-commerce player, you need to offer your clients full transparency and full visibility. I would like to talk about something else, if you allow.
Yeah.
Because the people in this room would like to see or to hear how they can benefit or how can they play a role in that. Because, and this is what I was explaining to Sam. There are, in the previous session, we were talking about the threat of shipping lines coming into the airline industry. We were talking about Prime Air, Amazon, coming to the airfreight industry. And there are obviously the traditional integrators, DHL, UPS, FedEx, and then now we have SF coming in with Kerry. So these players are focusing a lot, mainly on e-commerce. But if you go to e-commerce marketplaces, the challenge is, as Alim said, get the shipment the fastest way possible to the consumer. Because the client who ordered it, he wants it now. So the previous model, or when they started, everything was cross-border, was shipped out by air. But because they want the cheapest and the fastest, the model is changing. So what I'm trying to say is the following. We have the integrators model, where it is very expensive. And in order to cut on the integrated cost, the marketplace like Alibaba and all the rest, they went to the post office. But post offices have a very lousy service. So they went into a middle market and they changed the way they are doing business. They don't want to ship now directly by air. What they want to do, they want to ship by ocean to a closed distribution center and do the fulfillment from the country or from the region. And this is where we come. As freight forwarders, we need to readapt, change, rethink what we can offer to this e-commerce market or these e-commerce players, and how we can give them the right to service their clients better. And this is the challenge for us. Because at the end, it's all comes to moving a shipment from one place to the other, and this is what we do best. We used to call it Airfreight and now ocean freight, but the game is that we need to move it fast, with full transparency, and that means we need to convey the information on time. This is where we need digitalization, but we need to create models where we create a fulfillment center, whether it is for the direct delivery or for the return. And this is how we need to change things.
Yeah, I think I really completely agree with you. Because we are talking about the impact on the airfreight industry, and actually the audience, most of you would be traditional airfreight forwarders. But we don't want to stigmatize airfreight forwarders as if like you don't want to change. So I would like to ask the audience, from the audience, what is your struggle? Like, what are the challenges you are facing that really stop you from getting into e-commerce? Can I have the lady from Mexico?
Do you want me to stand up?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
I'm your man. Whenever there is a lady, you can find me.
We were talking a few minutes ago, and also we are talking for the countries which is around the first class of the world, but you are forgetting about Latin America, and let me talk about from my group, from the Latin America group, which we are facing for the governments which are not ready to this transition, you know. We are facing, the e-commerce is coming, but as you can see in the experience on your countries, you cannot see what Latin America is facing. I mean, e-commerce is coming, but we need to face the governments, we need to converse with companies to change the mind, you know, not only because of the airfreight industry. I mean, also we need to change in the process, in the operations team, which is not ready. We were talking about e-booking, e-airway bill, but in Mexico, for example, we cannot change at the same time you are doing in this time, you know? So this is my point, and you need to take a look into Latin America and the process and the updating in the airfreight industry.
Thank you very much. So basically, the struggle is many facets. I think the government policy and customs regulations on e-commerce, customs clearance especially, I think you mentioned earlier. So how do we untangle this? How do we solve this problem?
So I think the most important thing is companies that are doing cross-border e-commerce, they need to really have a good control of the customs, not just for their clients, but an understanding of local customs themselves. The problem lies with forwarders not having knowledge of the customs, and they expect that the customer sometimes, or even their agents have the knowledge. And as a e-commerce distributor in India, one of the largest, I told my team that everyone must know what the customs clearance is all about. Don't think just because you're outsourcing or we have a license, you can bypass not knowing the processes. And when we did that, it was a big jump, in the number of shipments coming in. There was a point where we had tied up with China Post, and they were sending in like rainloads of material that was to be distributed across India. It was a huge success. We had a tie with Dubai Post, and that was also a winner for distribution across India, only because of one reason, customs clearance. And there was a point where there was so much freight coming in from Dubai to India that we had to request freighters to be put in to Dubai Post, and that almost happened. And the reason they kind of like held back is custom clearance rules were changing. So we all must be ourselves knowing what's going on to really put a push to this business.
I think there's something very important. You're talking about South America, but South America is like any developing country. Let me put it this way: even Europe, that is the most advanced in terms of countries, are still struggling with e-commerce. E-commerce is a new thing that everybody's trying to understand and to grasp. 10 years ago, for the past 10 years, China was flooding Europe with shipments. Wrong declaration, undervalued, and so on and so forth. So Europe was struggling to control that because it was damaging the business. Europe as customs. Now, since July 1st, nothing goes into Europe without paying a VAT, even if it is €1. So, and they created something very important and very interesting in Europe. The VAT number for exporter into Europe. So if you want to export shipment into Europe, you need to have a VAT number that is registered in all countries. And that number, the shipper will be liable for. What I'm trying to say is very simple. Yes, as he said, customs is important. But it is part of our role as freight forwarders to educate customs on what we can do. We need to tell customs, and this is the biggest challenge, to explain to customs how to deal with e-commerce. Now, there are a lot of ways around that, and this is where we can play a major role, where a freight forwarder can be also an importer of record for e-commerce players. In a compliant manner, importer of record, pay taxes, represent them. The system is changing. E-commerce, if anyone will tell you, I understand e-commerce, tell him that means you still need, you don't understand anything, because every day e-commerce is changing. And we are seeing ways of creative ways of reaching the client at the fastest, in the fastest manner and at the cheapest manner. So it is really challenging, and the biggest challenge for e-commerce is compliance. And compliance, especially for countries like Europe or for instance, in the States, you can ship anything into the States below $800 is free of charge if it is for a customer, if it is for a personal use. I don't think this will last. It will not last long. And even customs are learning how to deal with that. I know that World Customs Organization are doing a lot of sessions to try to understand the challenges, and they're trying to help customs in developing countries to embrace e-commerce, to give them the system, to allow them to control. But at the same time, we have a major role in that, either by educating customs and helping them understanding and facilitating e-commerce, or by acting as importer of record in your country to be able to clear e-commerce shipment into the country. But I'm telling you this, the future is not for air freight in e-commerce. The future is by having more shipments being moved to a closer market, to the market. So we will have more shipment going by air freight, by ocean freight, to a fulfillment center that will be supplying customers with the product. But again, the big game is going to be the return. And this is where we, as freight forwarders, can play a major role. So you have customs clearance, you have first mile, you have last mile, you have return, you have warehousing, you have fulfillment, there are a lot of things where you can see how you can adapt to your customer, to your company, and create a certain added value in your country, because it's specific to the country. What is happening in India doesn't apply to Dubai. What is happening in Dubai doesn't apply to Beirut. What is happening in the UK doesn't apply to anywhere else. So you need to look into the opportunities that you can offer to e-commerce players in your country.
I think that's a very comprehensive answer, and thank you very much. Do you guys have anything to add to this?
When the other participants are speaking more about customs clearance difficulties, I could easily say that we don't face any such difficulty in the GCC region. The books are quite open and it's straightforward. VAT, duty, what is all applicable, and what are the items that's not allowed to be sent, like the adult toys, what may have gone for UK. So there is a lot of potential to the Middle East, and there's still a big potential to capitalize on the Middle East e-commerce sector.
Yeah, I think from my perspective as well, before Brexit, London is the gateway to Europe, and after Brexit, after the vote for Brexit, we know that we need to find another gateway in Europe because London is no longer a gateway to the EU. So when we had to find another partner in Amsterdam, they are traditional freight forwarders. They have no idea how to do customs clearance for e-commerce stuff. So we have to replicate our system and implement in Amsterdam, and we have to educate the customers in Netherlands and talk to them and show them and demonstrate how we do the customs clearance, show them how we can capture the import tax, and show them how much we can control and do our due diligence to say that we're in compliance with the customs rules. So these are the things. Everywhere would be the same, but I know the difficulty may be different. Maybe it's more difficult in Latin America, maybe because of the mindset or whatever. But things can be done, and it is our responsibility, the freight forwarders' responsibility to do this, because we can see, probably we see further than the government does. So I think we need to, as a group, we need to do more in this front. So one last question from the audience, talking about, because we've talked about customs declaration clearance. Is there another perspective on the challenges side? I think Marco, we have discussed. Marco, are you here? So what is your struggle as a traditional airfreight forwarder to get into e-commerce? We're running running short of time, so let's keep the answers short.
Hi, good morning. For me, it's like, I don't do any e-commerce, but it's like blocking the space for us as the traditional freight forwarder. Like for me, it's like we do a lot of time critical business, and there's another guys that do like the normal shipping, and the e-commerce is like blocking the space, blocking the warehouse spaces in the airport in Frankfurt, Amsterdam, and so on. So it's like, it's not the best for us as a normal freight forwarder, you know what I mean? And that's what we say, the customs side is like, I think it's really a struggle, especially in Europe, and also in the United States or Mexico. I think these countries are not ready for e-commerce.
Yeah, did you also say that there are some problems with, for example, documentation and import of records and all these kind of things?
Yeah, I think somebody can disagree with that. I think Amsterdam and London, they go more in the digital way with customs clearance. For Frankfurt, for example, it's like every single customs clearance is like touched by a customs officer, you know? And you handle like thousands of shipments every day, so that's not the fast way to handle these kind of business, you know what I mean? So I think there is a long way, especially in the old European countries, you know what I mean? It's like there's still the old way to handle these.
Okay, yeah. So do you have any comments on that? For example, on the customs tax declaration itself, of course, it's gonna be more complicated than just one importer and one commodity. Is there anything that we can do to help, or is any experience that we can share with?
I think that all will depend on the country.
Yeah.
But again, all depend on the country that you are working with and the merchant that you are working with. There are a lot of customers who would like to clear under one importer factor and then redistribute locally. That would be a totally different way of clearance from cross-border e-commerce, getting in with various consignees and various numbers of payment. So
Yeah.
there's no one answer.
Yeah.
You need to take things case by case.
Yeah, okay. So I think the lesson is we have to truly understand the local rules, get to understand what the customer's requirements is, and talk to them if there are any challenges and educate them. I think we've had a good discussion, and thank you very much for the panel.
Thank you.